Hello again everyone. So with Exile 2 entering early access next week, I figured I'd make a video going over some of the changes to crafting in PoE 2. So let's get into it. Alright, let's start off by covering the changes to currency in PoE 2. So first of all, alteration orbs and scoring orbs have been removed. So what this means then is that we'll have to get a new base item to craft on if we mess up our craft, or we'll have to spam annulment orbs, which could get pretty expensive. There's also been a few changes to orbs. So Chaos Orbs will now remove one random modifier and add one random modifier to an item instead of completely re-rolling it. Alchemy Orbs will still turn a white item into a rare, but this time it's only going to have 4 mods, it won't have a random amount between 4 and 6. Jeweler Orbs now come in a bunch of different tiers, and each tier guarantees an additional socket for our gems. And finally, Val Orbs still corrupt an item, changing it unpredictably, but this time, instead of replacing the item's implicit with a Val implicit, it seems to be more like an enchant that works with the item's implicit, so you get both. Also, during the livestream, Jonathan said this:
all the items that add mods are much more common than they were in Path of Exile 1, so that you can use them throughout your campaign playthrough.
So like Jonathan said, items that add a modifier to an item will be a lot more common to find in PoE 2 than it was in PoE 1, so this means things like Exalted Orbs should be a lot more common to find, and it could also mean that Exalted Orbs will now take the place of Chaos Orbs as the main currency for trading. Alright, so unlike in Path of Exile 1, gems won't be socketed into our items anymore, and in their place we have runes now. Now these runes grant us different modifiers when we socket them. As an example, the Glacial rune will give us a flat cold damage modifier if we socket it into a weapon, or it will give us cold resistance if we socket it into armor. Now the modifiers from runes are given as enchants, so they're not going to take up any affix slots on our items, so we can have a really good crafted item and have rune enchant on top of that. The Artificer's Orb is a new orb that's been added to PoE 2. It allows us to add sockets to an item, so a body armor can have 2 maximum sockets, 2-handed weapons can also have 2 maximum sockets, but all the other armors and 1-handed weapons can only have 1 maximum socket. Now we can obtain the Artificer Orbs by recycling items. Obviously these items have to have sockets already. And lastly, Val Orbs can have a chance to actually give us an additional socket, which can raise us above the socket limit. So for instance, we could take a 2-socket armor, use a Val Orb, and if we're lucky enough, we can actually turn that into a 3-socket armor. Okay, so let's move on to essences. Now essences have changed quite a bit. They used to turn white items into rare items. That's not the case anymore, it only turns it into a magic item. And also the essences don't give you a guaranteed mod anymore. How it works now is kind of similar to a fossil in PoE 1, so it gives you a random mod that's related to the essence you use. So if you use a fire essence, you're only going to roll fire mods. So it could be fire resistance, fire damage, or like burning damage, you know, stuff with the fire tag. We've also added greater essences. Now greater essences are basically just a normal essence that works as a regal orb. So whilst a normal essence will turn a white item into a magic item, the greater essence turns a magic item into a rare item and adds obviously a modifier that relates to the essence. Whilst it might seem having 2 essences is a good thing, essence crafting is going to be a lot harder in PoE 2. Now in PoE 1 we could use an essence and it would guarantee a mod that we wanted. It obviously would be the right tier depending on the essence we used, and then we would just spam that until we got other mods we wanted. In PoE 2 we've got to use an essence on a white item, pray we get the right mod with the right tier, and from there we've got to augment it, hope we got the right mod with the right tier, then we've got to greater essence it, again pray for the right mod with the right tier, and then we've got to exalt slam, and again pray for the right mods with the right tiers. So it's going to be a lot harder and a lot more expensive I think in the long run. Okay, so in Path of Exile 2, catalysts are now part of Breach, and they've been redesigned to kind of fit that theme. They've also added some new catalysts, which are themed after Breach bosses. So we have Tull's Catalyst, which enhances cold mods, and Zoth's Catalyst, which enhances fire mods. They've also reworked the Breach Ring, so the implicit is actually good now. So the new implicit basically allows the ring to have up to 50% quality, which means we can throw a lot more catalysts at it to buff our mods even more. Moving on to Distilled Emotions, they're basically a combination of Path of Exile 1's Blight Oils and Delirium Orbs. Now 3 of these emotions can be used to anoint an amulet with a passive from your skill tree, and emotions can also be used to instill a map with Delirium. Now, by doing this you're going to increase the difficulty and the reward of the map you've instilled. Okay, let's talk about Omens then. So in PoE 2, Omens have had a significant rework, Omens are now used for metacrafting, and they allow us to add and remove prefixes and suffixes from our items. For example, the Omen of Sinistral Exaltation will cause an Exalted Orb to add a prefix modifier. Also, we have the Omen of Dextral Annulment, which will cause an Annulment Orb to only remove a suffix modifier. Now, during the live stream, for a split second, they showed off the Omen of Great Exaltation. Now, this causes an Exalted Orb to add 2 mods instead of 1. Now, whilst it's not really a great omen, it is a usable omen. Now, since Ritual is my favourite mechanic, I'm personally just happy to see that omens are worth using now, because before, the vast majority of them were trash and no one used them. You know, we had the exception of the omens for not losing experience, or for crafting a unique item, or a 6 link, but that was about it. Now, hopefully, this will make Ritual a bit more reliable for profit. We'll have to wait and see. Now, in PoE 2, we're also removing the crafting bench and the harvest crafting bench. Now, I think, based on the omens we've just seen, that they're going to turn some of those crafts into new omens that we can find and use. Expedition is going to make a comeback in PoE 2, alongside ROG. Now, we haven't seen any footage of ROG crafting in PoE 2, but what we have seen is ROG in the game, and we've also seen the Order of the Chalice in a logbook. Now, if ROG crafting still exists and works the same way as it did in PoE 1, then Expedition is going to be really great for making good endgame items. Alright, well that's pretty much all of the PoE 2 crafting related content that I've seen so far. Obviously we'll discover a lot more when we get our hands on the game next Friday. Speaking of next Friday, I'm actually going to be working that day, so when I finish my shift I'll try and stream some PoE 2, but until then, take it easy.